This week for reading, we read two different stories. The first story we read was The Big Race, and the second story we read was Rules and Laws. Now we're going to talk about how these stories are alike and how they are a little bit different. So I want you to think about both stories. Remember in our story, The Big Race, we saw animals racing to win a big cake. In our story, Rules and Laws, we learned about different rules you have to follow and why laws are important. Think about which story is real and which story is make-believe. Which story is real? The Big Race or Rules and Laws? Our story, Rules and Laws, the one with the cop on the front of the cover, is our real story. How do we know that this is a real story and not make-believe? Think of what we learned in the story, Rules and Laws. Also, think about the kinds of pictures we saw in Rules and Laws. In this story, we saw pictures of real people. We talked about traffic laws, which are laws that we have to follow. We saw children at school. We saw real cars and signs, and even a school bus. We talked about rules that we follow, some at school, some to keep us safe, and some that we even play when we're playing games. Now let's look at some pictures from our story, The Big Race. How do we know that this story is make-believe? One way that we can know is that we know animals do not wear racing shirts and run in a race. Animals also do not talk. We saw our turtle talking in this story. We saw Red Lizard talking in this story. So there are a lot of things in both of our stories that help us tell which ones are real and which ones are make-believe. Something that I want you to do at home, so you'll need to get a sheet of paper or your notebook that I gave you. We are going to make a list at home. So you're going to do this on a piece of paper, and then we are going to share in our morning meeting. So we are going to write a list of rules that runners should follow in the big race. Then we can talk about why the rules make sense. So if you need to pause the video to get your notebook out or a sheet of paper, you can go ahead and pause the video now. So we are going to write 3 rules that the runner should follow from our story, The Big Race. So you don't have to write 3 rules on your paper. I just put that there so you know we are writing 3. So let's think back in our story, The Big Race. Think about if all of the runners would have followed the rules, what would have happened in the race? So we're going to look back in our story, The Big Race, but I want you to just imagine. So picture in your mind, if you were going to be running a really big and important race, what rules would you want to follow to make sure that you did your best? Think about what 3 rules would you need to follow to do your best while running a big race. So let's look back at our story and see what some of the runners did that maybe wasn't the best choice. First, we see Cottontail. We talked about why Cottontail did not win the race. We talked about that on Tuesday, and we made a chart and drew a conclusion. One of the reasons we talked about is that she gets distracted by this butterfly. We also talked about you can see Cottontail leaving the track to follow this butterfly. Our character Rat seemed to have fell into some hay. Now, how could you manage to do this? Do you think that Rat was paying attention? This is where we would have to draw a conclusion. We don't know how Rat fell into the hay, but maybe she wasn't paying attention. The snake also stopped to chase some bugs. So he stopped running the race just to look at some ladybugs. And Roadrunner tripped over a rake. Oh, so all of these runners had some things happen to them that caused them not to win the race. Red Lizard ended up winning the race. So think about these characters. If they would have followed the rules of a race, they could have won. So on your paper, I want you to make up 3 rules the runners should have followed. So for example, we saw that Cottontail in the story got distracted. She was looking away from the track. So for example, a rule that I could put would say, focus straight ahead. Now this would be one of my rules because think of being on a track. If you are looking at the people next to you and looking in the crowd, looking up at the sky, you are not focusing on how far and fast you need to run to win the race. If I was running in a race and I kept looking over at the runner next to me, I could watch them pass me while I'm running. But if I focus straight ahead and only worry about myself and my running, then I can focus and do my best in the race. So I want you to think of 3 rules that the runners should follow in the big race. And then we will share these during our morning meeting tomorrow. I'm so excited to hear the rules that you make up. Next, we're going to get ready to read our decodable, The Race. If you're still working on your 3 rules, you can go ahead and pause the video now, and when you press play, we will be ready to start reading. So if you're still working, go ahead and press pause on the video. If you have finished writing your 3 rules and you're ready to start reading our decodable, then let's get started. Our decodable for today is called The Race. Now, if you remember yesterday, we talked about some soft letters. We talked about a soft C. Listen to the word race. Race. What ending sound do you hear in the word race? We hear S. The soft C makes the S sound in the word race. Be listening for words that have the soft C. So let's get started reading The Race by Carrie Murray, illustrated by Jerry Smith. This race is fun to watch. get into the fun. Yell, yell, clap, clap, race, race, race. So we talked about how the word race has the soft C, which makes the S sound. So we saw this word a lot on this page. Race, race, race. Dave and Ace got in this race. Dave will run fast. Ace will run fast. Crack! The race starts. Dave and Ace take off. So we saw a lot of animals on the first page that were waiting for the race to start. And then we see that there are 2 bears who are running in this race. Do you notice one of the bears' names that says the soft C? The bears' names are Dave and Ace. The name Ace is spelled A-C-E, but we hear S at the end. The name Ace has the soft C. Dave has a lane. It is his space. Ace has a lane. It is his space. They must run and jump in that lane. They can't trade lanes. What about on this page? Do you see a word that has the soft C sound? S. I talked about the lanes they run in and how it is their space. The word space has the soft S. Space. Madge and Grace got in this race. They will skate fast. Go Madge, go Grace. Skate as fast as you can. Race, race, race. So now we see 2 characters, Madge and Grace, that are racing. How is their race different from Dave and Ace's race? How is their race different? Well, Madge and Grace are skating in their race, and Dave and Ace are running and jumping hurdles. Let's listen to our characters' names. Madge, Grace. We can see that the name Grace has the soft C in it, and we can hear it at the end. Grace. Look at the name Madge. We also talked about this week how the soft G and soft GDE make the J sound. Look at how Madge is spelled and how it sounds. Madge. Madge. Blake and Trace got in this race. Blake and Trace set the pace. Will Trace race past Blake? Go, Blake! Go, Trace! Wow! On this page, we had a lot of words that had the soft C that makes the S sound. Can you tell me some of the words we see that have the S sound on this page with the soft C? our characters' names, Blake and Trace. The name Trace has the soft C. They are running. They are riding their bikes in a race. The word race also has the soft C. And one more. Do you see it? The word that has the soft C. Pace. Says Blake and Trace set the pace. The last race is over. Madge, Grace, Blake, Trace, Dave, and Ace sit in the shade. The judge gave 2 of them red badges and 4 of them blue badges. So out of all of the characters we read about, can you name the characters that had this soft C sound in their name? There was Grace, Trace, and Ace. We can see that in the word badges and the word judge, we see the soft D, G, E, which makes the J sound. What a fun story for us to read to practice our phonics skills that we have learned this week. Now let's complete an activity in our reader's notebook to finish out our lesson. Alright everybody, to end our reading lesson today, let's end with doing an activity in our reader's notebook. Today we are going to be working on page 206. So I went ahead and circled that page number at the bottom. So this week we have been working on the long A sound. So the short A says ah, the long A says A. The long A will say its name. So what we are going to do, we are going to be writing some of these spelling words from the box to complete each of these sentences. So let's read over these spelling words first. So we're going to be right over here in the box. All of these words will have a long A, so they'll say A in them. So let's start with this first word. Aim, came, late, late, ache, make, brave, brave, shape, shape, gave, gave. So what we're going to do, I'm going to help you read each of these sentences, and when we get to the blank, you are going to look at the words in the box and decide which word best completes the sentence. Let's look at number 1. Number 1 says, I got here blank. Would we say, I got here came, late, make, brave, shape, gave. I got here blank. Choose the word from the blank. Choose the word from the box and write it in the blank. Let's move to number 2. If I'm moving too fast, you can pause the video as needed. Number 2 says, will you blank me a cake? Will you came? Will you late? Will you make? Will you brave? Will you shape? Will you gave? What word best completes the sentence for will you blank me a cake. Write the word from the box in the blank. Number 3. He blank to play with me. What word from the box best fits? He came to play with me. He late to play with me. He make to play with me. He brave to play with me. He shape to play with me. He gave to play with me. Write the word from the box that best completes the sentence. Number 4 says Max is big and blank. Is Max big and came? Big and late? Big and make? Big and brave? Big and shape? Big and gave. Write the word from the box that would best complete the sentence. Max is big and blank. 5 says he blanked me a new pen. What word from the box would best fit? He came me a new pen. He gave me a new pen. He late me a new pen. He make me a new pen. He brave me a new pen. He shape me a new pen. He gave me a new pen. What word from the box best fits in the blank? And number 6 says, what blank is that box? What came is that box? What late is that box? What make is that box? What brave is that box? What shape is that box? What gave is that box? Which word from the box would best fit in the blank for number 6? Look at all of the words you have used so far. Now let's go over your answers for your workbook page. Alright, for number 1, we would have said, I got here late. We would put the word late. We would put the word late in the blank for number 1. I got here late. For number 2, what did you put in the blank? For number 2, we would have said, will you make me a cake? Ask somebody, will you make me a cake? So for number 2, we put the word make in the blank. What about for number 3? What did you put for number 3? On number 3, we would have said, he came to play with me. So on number 3, we would write the word came in the blank. He came to play with me. How are you doing so far? Number 4 said Max is big and brave. Max is big and brave. So we would have wrote the word brave in the blank for number 4. On number 5, what did you put in the blank for he blank me a new pen? He gave me a new pen. Gave. And for our last one, we have one word left. Everybody, What shape is that box? So we would put the word shape in the blank for number 6. So we had the words late, make, came, brave, gave, shape. All right, everybody. Well, that is the end of our reading lesson for today. But remember, if you are not in a live intervention group with me on Google Meet, to be logging on to Imagine Learning and Imagine Math.